In 1983, Nigeria expelled 2 million undocumented West African migrants, half of whom turned out to be Ghanaians, some of whom had built their entire lives, work, education, and family in Nigeria. They were forced to leave Nigeria with an initial ultimatum of January 17, 1983, but was later extended to January 31st same year. What happened? Why did Nigeria send Ghanaians and other Africans away? Could it be a payback? Well, let's start from the very beginning. It all started in 1958. Nigeria had just discovered oil as a young, soon-to-be liberated country with a population of 100 million. During this period, multinational oil companies had started flocking to Nigeria to set up shop in the country to drill oil commercially. First, it was Shell, and later Mobil and Egypt set up their facilities to start drilling in Nigeria. The oil money was steady and hopes were high that Nigeria could prosper. Despite the brutal military regime the country experienced during that period, in the 1970s, the economy exploded where oil prices skyrocketed worldwide. The golden decade had arrived and the country became Africa's wealthiest, securing its title Giant of Africa. By 1974, Nigeria's oil wells were spitting out some 2.3 million barrels a day. The standard of living improved. There was an influx of people from the farms into the cities. When they traveled, robust iron buses were generally preferred over cheap plastic sacks. The influx came not just from within Nigeria, but from across the region. At this time, Nigeria was like the big brother to other African countries, so it became the perfect destination for those who sought economic prosperity. While Nigeria was booming, its closest English-speaking neighbor, Ghana, was going through quite the opposite. A deadly mix of famine and insurgency was precipitated by a crash in the price of cocoa. Ghana was the world's largest cocoa producers in the 1960s, and the 1966 coup, which ousted the independence leader Kwame Nkrumah. At that time, the country's population hovered around the 70 million mark, but several million people decided to journey east and try their fortunes in prosperous Nigeria. Ghana was close to a failed state then. Nothing was working in the country. Money was hard to come by and food was scarce. People couldn't buy even a tin of milk and queues were always in grocery shops. This was the situation in Ghana then. So, recruiters from Nigeria came to Ghana looking for people who would like to teach or take up casual jobs. These were jobs Nigerians themselves were unwilling to do. But most Ghanaians who were jobless grabbed these job offers and migrated to Nigeria. So Nigeria became the new land of opportunities for Ghanaians. There were so many in the country that every Ghanaian family had a relative working somewhere in Nigeria. They lived across the 90 states in Nigeria then. They were teachers in primary and secondary schools. They were thorough and often known for their disciplinary approach to teaching. Law offices, shoe repair shops, ice cream parlors, restaurants, etc. were flooded with people from neighboring African countries, including Ghana. Life was good, things were going fine, and the Ghanaians and other Africans living in Nigeria were happy. Most of them were living their dream lives. But everything changed when large consumer markets for crude oil, such as the United States and Canada, slipped into recession and demand for crude oil was low. This led to a continuous dip in the price of crude oil in 1982. By 1983, the price of a barrel had fallen to $29, down from $37 in 1980. At around the same time, the United States began producing its own oil, further cutting demand and causing excess supply. The Nigerian economy was almost exclusively reliant on oil and was hit hardly. By 1982, 90% of the country's foreign reserve had been wiped out, according to the Washington Post. Food prices skyrocketed and salaries became erratic. It was difficult for some state governments to pay their salaries. Some states were only able to pay salaries once in 2 months. Things were that bad. Unfortunately, poor policy decisions at the highest level of government only made things worse. Now, Ghana's nightmare was being replayed in Nigeria. As the country began to feel the crunch, it started turning inwards. Instead of coming up with a long-lasting situation to fix the economic mess the country was in, politicians started pointing accusing fingers at other Africans living in the country. By 1982, Politicians started using words like aliens in their manifestos in preparation for the 1983 general elections. They blamed African migrants, especially Ghanaians, for the poor economic situation of the country. These politicians claimed that Ghanaians had taken all the jobs and brought crime to Nigeria, and if elected, they would chase them away, they promised. These careless statements by politicians ignited serious animosity between Nigerians and Ghanaians. So, on the 17th of January 1983, President Shehu Shagari declared the expulsion of about 2 million undocumented migrants living in the country. Half of them were Ghanaians. They were given till January 31st same year to leave the country or face jail. With the announcement and threats of arrest and possible jail that came with it, there was a mass exodus of Ghanaians from Nigeria. The borders were a disaster, crammed with desperate people carrying chairs on their head, dragging their check bags and selling off whatever they couldn't lift to make money. Millions of Ghanaians left Nigeria through any possible exit they could find. In fact, serious stampede would kill many down south at the semi-border in Lagos. Dozens were loaded onto open haulage trucks headed for Ghana. But there was a problem. Jerry Rawlings, the then Ghana's military head of state, had ordered the borders with Togo closed to desist coup plotters and insurgents, so there would be no passage for days. In response, Togo closed its border with Benin to avoid a refugee crisis. So there was a serious traffic jam and people were stuck at the border. Cars stalled bumper to bumper from the Benin-Togo border to Lagos, with people caught in sweaty heat and without water. Diseases started spreading. The United States prepared to send in aid. The League of Red Cross Society airlifted 500 tents, 10,000 blankets, and thousands of buckets, according to the Washington Post. The international community condemned Nigeria's decision to expel foreigners. Analysts believe it was an overdue payback by the Nigeria leaders. Similar incident had happened to Nigerians living in Ghana in 1969. The then Ghanaian Prime Minister Kofi Busaya invoked the Aliens Compliance Order and deported an estimated 2.5 million undocumented African migrants, the majority of whom were Nigerians. The Nigerians had grown unknowingly enterprises, their business acumen sharper to the detriment of Ghanaian businesses. Even in Ghana's instability then, Nigerian traders managed to have everything and at cheaper price. There was one crucial difference between the Nigerians expelled from Ghana in 1969 and the Ghanaians expelled from Nigeria in 1983. The Nigerians had money. They were traders in kola nuts who made big money and built houses, but they left their houses or sold them cheaply. So the deadlock in 1983 was finally broken by Ghana, which reopened its border and sent ships to Cotonou in Benin to reduce the numbers traveling by road. Many Ghanaians who were traveling back home fell into the sea because of the sheer volume of people scrambling for a place on the ships. A year later, the then military ruler in Nigeria, General Muhammadu Buhari, announced another expulsion, this time of all foreigners, including those who had resident permits. About 700,000 were again forced out. This series of expulsions between Nigeria and Ghana have really affected relationships between the two countries in a way. None of them has officially apologized to each other. What do you think about this story? Kindly share your thoughts in the comment below. Thank you.